The rain never stopped. It fell in needles, in curtains, in the slow drip of a coroner's faucet left running. It turned the American trenches of Sector 14 into open graves of brown soup where rats the size of house cats floated belly up beside the boots of the living. Sergeant Elias Crow, 24, Chicago-born, eyes already carved deeper than his father's ever were, stood on the fire step at midnight, periscope pressed to the cracked lens, watching no man's land. 300 yards of pulverized earth. Shell craters overlapped like the sores of a long untreated disease, barbed wire twisted into shapes no human hand could have planned. Bodies, American, German, French from forgotten summer attacks, lay where they had fallen, some for weeks, some for months. The smell was alive, sweet corruption, cordite excrement, the metallic perfume of blood gone thick and black. The guns had fallen silent. That hour, when even the artillery seemed to grow weary of repeating the same hymn, Crow lowered the periscope. "Anything," whispered Private Ruiz beside him, voice scraped raw from mustard gas. Nothing moving, Crow lied. Because something was moving, he had first seen it 3 nights earlier, a pale shape too liquid for a man, gliding between craters like oil spreading across water. It had paused above Lieutenant Bellamy, gut shot on the 4th, still unrecovered. The pale visage lowered what passed for a face into the open abdomen. There had been wet, rhythmic sounds. A sigh carried on the wind, soft and almost reverent. Crow had kept silent. The company was already fracturing. Private Kowalski had walked singing straight into the wire 2 nights before, arms spread like a revival preacher, until the Maxim guns turned him into fluttering red ribbons. Shell shock was the diagnosis whispered in every dugout. No one needed stories of ghosts that fed tonight, however. The shapes were bolder, 3 of them. They rose from the mud as though the earth itself had grown mouths and was retching up its dead, tall, glistening forms. Skin, the color of curdled milk, stretched over joints that bent at impossible angles. Limbs, 8, 10, impossible to count precisely, ended in fingers that branched and rebranched like wet coral. Where faces should have been were clusters of orifices, puckered rings lined with inward curving teeth, vertical slits that wept black ichor, mouths that split sideways and sideways again. Pressed into the flesh of their torsos like living cameos were the contorted faces of soldiers, Bellamy's unmistakable mouth stretched in a rictus that could have been agony or rapture, eyes rolled to show only whites. One knelt over a German private whose legs ended above the knees. It parted the corpse's jaws with deliberate gentleness, almost tenderness. A long, translucent proboscis, ridged, veined, slid down the throat. The body jerked once, twice. Muscles that no longer belonged to the living twitched in remembered patterns. The demon's abdomen swelled as it drew something deeper than blood, the distilled residue of terror, of pain held too long, of every scream swallowed in the dark. Ruiz crossed himself. "Madre de Dios," quiet, Crow hissed. The second demon found Corporal Hayes bayoneted through the eye yesterday. It crouched above him, split open its own torso along a seam that ran from throat to groin. Inside was a vault of glistening architecture, ribs curved like cathedral arches, intestines braided into intricate patterns, a heart suspended on threads of sinew still beating in slow, deliberate time. The demon reached down, lifted Hayes's head by the hair, and pressed the ruined face into the opening. When it withdrew, Hayes's features had begun to migrate, sinking into the demon's flesh, becoming another screaming mask among dozens. The third simply opened its belly like a book of hours. It gathered loose pieces from the mud, severed thighs, loops of bowel, shattered ribs, and arranged them inside itself with the care of a jeweler setting stones. When the seam closed, the incorporated flesh pulsed in perfect synchrony with the greater mass. Crow felt his stomach turn over, yet he could not look away. The sight was obscene and somehow sacred beauty forged from mutilation, order sculpted from chaos. Dawn arrived grey and ashamed. The demons melted back into the earth. They left the bodies subtly changed. Hayes now bore a second mouth carved from groin to sternum, its lips made of his own finger bones. Bellamy's abdomen moved gently, as though something inside were still breathing. The men whispered. Lieutenant Carver knew West Point polished, dismissed it as rats and bad light. He ordered extra rum. The rum tasted of grave soil. That night they came closer. Crow volunteered for watch again. Sleep now brought only one dream. The demons gliding into the trench, opening their bellies like doors, beckoning him into warm red chambers where the war ended forever. At 013, German flares popped overhead. In the magnesium glare, no man's land was a living tapestry. Dozens, hundreds. A silent congregation feasting on the harvest of yesterday's failed raid. One demon had skewered 3 corpses on a single elongated limb and revolved slowly like a grotesque maypole, while smaller shapes, infant-sized, eyeless, crawled from rents in its flesh and burrowed into the eyes of the dead. A wounded German crawled toward the American lines, still alive, still screaming. A demon caught him, lifted him with impossible gentleness. It opened a vertical seam down its chest and pressed the man's face inside. The screams changed, became lower, almost ecstatic. When the demon released him, the German rose on 8 new segmented legs, torso fused seamlessly to the greater body. Together they retreated into the dark, moving in perfect harmony, singing in a single layered voice. Ruiz crossed himself again. "They're taking our boys, Sarge. Making them part of whatever they are." Crow said nothing. He was staring at the place where the German had vanished. Part of him, small, treacherous, envied the surrender. The next 4 nights were a seminar in patient damnation. Private O'Leary was dragged from the sap by his own intestines while relieving himself. They found his torso at dawn, skin flayed and stretched over a framework of his own ribs like a grotesque pavilion. Inside, the organs had been rearranged with surgical artistry into a map of Chicago, his hometown. The liver lay where Lake Michigan should be. The heart beat steadily in the center of the loop. Levine, Kowalski's replacement, barely 19, lasted longer. The demons entered the dugout on silent, suckered limbs while he slept. One forced open his mouth and extruded a living cord of intestine down his throat. The cord pulsed, depositing something. By morning, Levine's abdomen was a translucent dome. Through the stretched skin, the men could see hundreds of small shapes moving in slow, deliberate patterns, constructing something larger within him. Levine begged for a bullet. Carver refused. "We don't waste rounds on cowards." Crow put the muzzle to Levine's temple himself. 1 shot. The body jerked. The belly split with a soft sigh. Newborn things spilled out, already rat-sized, and began to feed with careful, familial attention. The men stopped sleeping. They stopped eating. They began watching no man's land with something dangerously close to yearning. On the 17th, the order came. Over the top at 0500, Carver gave a short speech about liberty and democracy. No one clapped. Crow led what remained of his squad, 12 men out of 40 into the wire. German machine guns opened at once. Men dropped screaming. Blood turned the mud the color of fresh rust. The demons rose to greet the dying. They did not touch the living. They waited. A boy from Tennessee took a round through both lungs. Before he struck the ground, 2 demons were upon him. One entered through the mouth, the other through the chest wound. They met inside, fusing flesh to flesh, turning the boy into a living bridge of meat and sinew. His last breath carried a single word: "Thank you." Another soldier, gutted by shrapnel, had his intestines drawn out and rewoven into an intricate spiral by a demon whose hide was scarred with what looked like scripture. The man died with a faint smile. Crow fought like a man trying to outrun his own shadow. Bayonet, rifle butt, bare hands. A German came at him, already half changed, face split vertically, a second mouth grinning where the nose had been. Crow shot it through the heart. It fell laughing. By 0700 the attack had collapsed. The survivors crawled back, carrying fragments of friends. Crow returned with Ruiz and 2 others. That night the demons raised their cathedral directly across the wire. Bodies stacked and fused into a tower of meat 30 feet high. At its summit crouched the largest yet, a queen whose abdomen swelled like a dome of red marble, faces of 1,000 soldiers pressed into her flesh, all frozen in the same silent scream. Her legs were the legs of every man who had died in this sector, jointed, graceful, terrible. She opened. Inside was a red cathedral where agony had been alchemized into release. Wounds became doorways. The dead were not erased but remade, preserved in endless motion, bound together in glistening unity, she sang. The song was every mother's lullaby, every priest's absolution, every boy's last prayer before the shell landed. It promised an end to cold, to mud, to the stupid arithmetic of young lives fed into wire. One by one the Americans began to walk toward it, a replacement first, then a lieutenant. Then Sergeant Major Hayes, dead 3 days, walking again on clicking new limbs. Ruiz looked at Crow. Tears carved clean tracks through the filth on his cheeks. "Sarge, I can't anymore." Crow nodded once. "Me neither." They stepped over the parapet together. The Queen received them. She opened a seam the size of a doorway. Ruiz entered without hesitation. A moment later his face appeared on her flank, eyes wide, mouth shaping the words "I'm home." Crow was last. The Queen lowered her head. Breath like every battlefield since Shiloh washed over him. She had no eyes, only the composite gaze of every soldier who had ever died afraid. "You fought so hard to remain broken," she said inside his mind. "Let me make you whole." She parted her central seam, a canyon of flesh from throat to groin. Inside, Crow saw his brother Tommy, killed at Belleau Wood, standing whole, waving, smiling. Crow stepped forward. The change was total. Bones shattered and re-knit stronger. Nerves rewired into symphonies of sensation. Skin parted along clean lines and was rewoven with living filament. Eyes multiplied until he saw every stratum of suffering and transcendence at once. When it was finished, he stood beside the Queen, 8 legs now, human smile intact, terrible and beautiful. That night the war ended for Sector 14. Dawn brought German white flags. The Americans cheered. Generals wrote dispatches. Medals were promised. But the survivors who had not walked noticed certain things. The mud never dried. The rain never ceased. Every night when flares rose, 2 figures stood on the old German parapet. The Queen of Flesh and her consort, Sergeant Elias Crow, remade, radiant, watchful. He guarded them. He kept the deeper things, the hungers that would have come if the feasting ever stopped from rising. The men who lived went home. They married. They raised children. They never spoke of what they had seen, yet on nights when rain fell in the old rhythm, they woke tasting wet silk and copper, hearts pounding with a longing they could not name. And in the unploughed fields of France the communion continued. Elias Crow was carried on the rolls as missing, presumed dead. The army was half correct. He was missing. But he had never been more present. And on quiet nights, when fresh troops rotated into the old sector for the war that always returns, he would rise on jointed legs, walk to the wire, and whisper through the rain, "Come home, boys." The table is set. The feast never ends. It simply changes guests.